So, somewhere in your pile of inserts from today, you have a picture of a pew. Should look like this. Mine's in black and white because they took the crappy one. And on the other side of it, you have to flip it this way because I made it. You'll see a view from that pew. And for 1 week in August, that pew was my pew while I was on retreat on Star Island. It's the back right pew, in case you wondered where I sit when left to my own devices. You will see my son sitting over there now. And I sat in that pew every morning for a week. Now, I want to be clear that even though I was at a retreat center, a church retreat center, not everyone was going to morning worship. Just as I never quite made it to evening vespers. In the morning, there were people preparing for workshops. There were people sleeping in. There were people sitting on the porch, finishing their coffee and their conversations. In fact, at this retreat, there was no real external compulsion. There was no requirement to attend anything. It was a family retreat. As with most families, people were there for different reasons. So every day, we happy few, we morning worshipers, represented a distinct minority of the retreat attenders. You see, we had chosen worship for our own reasons. We had our own internal compulsions. We were answering our own call, whatever that call may have been for each of us. And while I began the week sitting in that back pew as a stranger, it wasn't long before I would make sure to get to my seat a little early before worship started, to look for the regulars, for my pewmates. And together we sought, as Ken Patton put it in our responsive reading, together we sought that solitude found in the midst of those who seek their hidden reckonings. That solitude found in the midst of those who seek their hidden reckonings. So, I'm going to see some hands. It's okay. There may be none. But have any of you ever noticed that every year we start with this responsive reading? That's all right. That's what I expected. It means I'm not preaching the same sermon each week. No, this is actually great. Now, there is a reason we start with this one, of course. And it's because it's a day like this one that he's describing. One where many of us seek out our accustomed places and others find new places to which they hope to grow accustomed. Also, and in a different sense, Patton describes the experience of those partygoers in our reading from Luke today that Timothy read. Those partygoers gathering as individuals, mostly as strangers, in order to grow in celebration, in order to make a happening, and in their diversity, in order to bring forth the commonwealth of heaven, a life lived closer to each other and to the ideal. We arrive out of many singular rooms, Patton says, walking over the branching streets. We enlarge our voices in common speaking and singing. We worshipers are like those partygoers, the ones who actually made it to the party. We are people who were drawn, in some sense, compelled, and called to this place. It was a radical welcome in the Bible. And we know in our hearts that the welcome we seek and that this congregation seeks to offer is a radical one too. Because we human beings do not come here in our perfection, do we? We do not come here in our perfection. nor are we, frankly, seeking perfection, but in our inherently imperfect state of humanity. Like good universalists, we know that participating in that divine love is, in fact, enough. We know that participating in that divine love that we participate in here is, in fact, enough. That being human and living into a deeper understanding of our humanity is, in fact, enough. Enough to build a community of worship and of faithful seeking that reaches out, as in the Gospel of Luke, to those on the margins and fights to bring them in. That is enough. This parable tells us that we humans have nothing to fear. Go into town, it says, into the streets and alleys, and bring those who are poor or crippled or those who are blind or lame. Go out and scour the side roads and the back roads and make them come in. I want my house to be full. I want my house to be full. Now, if we gave a party and our friends couldn't make it, it's happened to me. If we gave a party and our friends couldn't make it and they had good enough reasons, such as the ones given, prior commitments, both commercial and personal, we might cancel our party or reschedule it for another day. But that's not what happened here in the parable. That's not what happened in the Bible, and it's not happening with each other today. A radical welcome invites everyone. So no matter where we sit, in what pew, or how often, whether we have lost count of the number of Sundays spent in this room, or whether we can count them on one hand, we all have a place in this congregation. Now, when I was on that retreat, the Reverend Matilda Cantwell, who was Minister of the Week and the chaplain the rest of the time at Smith College, made a special effort to welcome everyone. In a similar way to our own opening words today, she welcomed us, both in specific and in general terms. And she did that because we were all invited. We were all invited by something beyond our control, invited to build community, to make a family out of those we met there. And again, to take part, to participate and respond. Worship, you see, is a celebration. It's a party. And church is too. It isn't like television or the movies. We do not come here to passively receive information and entertainment. But instead, we come here to make the place and the moment come alive by our actions. Now, there's requirements for the host, too. But there are requirements for the rest of us. Like the messengers in Luke, we must extend that welcome. And like any good partygoer, we must do our part to keep the party going. Now, in that reading from the Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook, we see an important observation about human nature. An individual human, it says, might have a relatively short lifespan, but a human nation or culture preserves tradition with origins far beyond the reach of a single human's memory. They live fully in the present, but also plan for the future. They, humans, we, live fully in the present, but also plan for the future. We think about our legacy. Or as Patton concludes, this is the reason of cities, of homes, of assemblies in the houses of worship. This house of worship This Eliot Church has its own legacy, its own message, a message of openness, a message of radical welcome, an interpretation of and a goal for the world born out of a tradition of non-creedalism, of inquiry and exploration, of healthy skepticism leading to greater understanding, that we try in our own manner, and with many mistakes and bumps along the way, we try to enact here in this place, to refine and to deepen, and to hand on to whoever comes next, to whoever we meet, to whatever blessed stranger carries our ideas, our ideals, our vision into the future. But people, these ideas, they need our help. That vision of radical welcome is under assault, you may have noticed. You may have noticed all across the many cultures of humanity there is fear, and fear has drawn people back into the smallest and most restricted circles of association and relationship that we can manage. Walls are being put up, labels placed on everyone and everything. And in the midst of this challenge, it falls to us to keep this other, countercultural party alive. We must do it, too, with the hope and joy that brought us here originally, and that has marked generations of progressive thinkers and worshipers for centuries. Frankly, it doesn't sound like much of a slog to me. It doesn't sound like it's all that hard, unless we make it so. Humans can make anything a slog if they work hard enough at it. This congregation provides many opportunities, both for seriousness and for fun, for worship and coffee and justice and service, for eating out and dining in. It is here. This church is here for you in your times of need and in your times of joy. But guess what? It is also here for all that time in between. Moments when you just want to hang out, to be with people, to seek those faces again. So now, as we kick off another year of journeys together, let us take a moment in silence to be in this place with a transcendent spirit and with each other, with the members and friends of the Eliot Church congregation.